In 2010, Cartoon Network was moving nearly $2 billion in retail merchandise.
Right.
Like a massive global juggernaut. But then, a decade later, its historic Burbank studio was emptied out. Its website was effectively deleted. And millions of fans were like holding this massive digital vigil online.
With the hashtag RIP Cartoon Network.
Exactly. Hashtag RIP Cartoon Network was trending everywhere. And it just makes you wonder, how does an untouchable empire just vanish?
Well, the thing is, it doesn't vanish overnight. I mean, even if it feels that way to you as a consumer,
Right.
it gets dismantled piece by piece. It happens in boardroom meetings, through algorithmic shifts, and honestly, by the crushing weight of corporate debt. It's this incredible, wild trajectory from a brilliant creative incubator to basically becoming a casualty of the streaming wars.
So today, we are unhacking the complete, unvarnished, 30-year roller coaster of Cartoon Network.
The whole thing.
Yeah, and we are looking at a stack of incredibly revealing sources for this deep dive. We've got vintage 1990s press releases, historical Nielsen ratings data.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
Oh, totally. Plus, internal corporate memos that leaked during all the various Warner Bros. Mergers. We have financial and licensing reports from the network's peak, and this 1996 Federal Trade Commission antitrust document that frankly reads like a corporate thriller.
It really does.
So, okay, let's unpack this. We're going to figure out how this network literally hacked the television business model, built a multi-billion-dollar cultural monolith, and then somehow lost its own plot.
And we really have to start in the early 1990s, December 1991 to be exact, because to understand the sheer audacity of launching this network, you have to put yourself in the landscape of 1991 cable television.
Right, which was completely different from today.
Exactly. Channel scarcity was a massive, massive hurdle. Cable was mostly analog back then.
Yeah.
So a local cable provider only had a finite number of physical slots to offer homes. If you wanted to add a new network, you often had to convince that provider to kick off the local weather feed or a public access channel.
Which means you better have an incredible, compelling pitch.
Oh, absolutely.
And the guy making the pitch here is media mogul Ted Turner. His company, Turner Broadcasting System, is already a beast.
Right, he's got TBS, TNT, CNN, Headline News.
Yeah, he's basically king of cable.
Yeah.
But then Turner decides he wants to buy Hanna-Barbera Productions. Why?
Well, because Hanna-Barbera was sitting on a literal gold mine of intellectual property. But their parent company was suffocating.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Hanna-Barbera was owned by Great American Communications, which was backed by a financier named Carl Lindner. And Lindner had leveraged the company to the hilt.
Debt.
Exactly. By late 1991, they were completely drowning in debt. They desperately needed to offload assets. So Turner saw the opening, but, so did MCA Universal and Hallmark Cards.
The Hallmark Cards, that's kind of funny.
But it triggered this massive bidding war.
A bidding war for the rights to, Yogi Bear and Scooby-Doo.
Basically, yeah. A bidding war for the foundational texts of American television animation. So Turner essentially partners with the Apollo Investment Fund to secure the capital, and he wins the bid for $320 million.
$320 million in 1991.
Right.
I mean, adjusted for inflation, that is a staggering amount of capital. And when you look at what they actually bought, it's not just the brands of the Flintstones or the Jetsons. They bought a physical, massive library of 8,500 hours of animation.
Yes. And just think about the physical logistics of that for a moment.
Yeah, where do you even put it?
Right, because this isn't a hard drive transfer like today. We are talking about digitizing and archiving thousands upon thousands of analog 16mm film reels.
Wow.
And 3/4-inch U-matic magnetic tapes. Turner basically bought the literal physical history of Saturday morning cartoons, plus the distribution rights and the ongoing production infrastructure.
And then, less than a year later, October 1992, he flips that massive archive into Cartoon Network.
Yeah, the world's first 24-hour all-animation network.
Now, I look at this, and I immediately think of, Disney buying Marvel or Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
You buy a massive back catalog of IP because it has a baked-in fandom.
Right.
But launching a 24-hour network devoted entirely to cartoons in 1992. I mean, rival executives at the time were quoted in our sources saying there was, quote, little appetite for it.
Yeah, they thought he was crazy.
Because even with 8,500 hours, eventually the tapes just loop. So how do you convince advertisers that people won't just get bored?
Well, you don't pitch it as a babysitting channel. That was the trick. Turner's executives deployed this brilliant dual-target demographic strategy.
Okay, dual target. How did that work?
So at the time, the kids market, the lucrative 2 to 11 demographic, was heavily dominated by Nickelodeon.
Right, Nick was huge.
Exactly. If Turner just went after the kids, they'd be playing a losing game of catch-up from day one. Instead, they explicitly stated they wanted to hook the children while simultaneously targeting their nostalgic baby boomer parents.
Ah, the co-viewing strategy.
Yes.
You use the colorful motion of, like, the Jetsons to get the toddler to sit down.
Right.
And then the 35-year-old parent walks through the living room, gets hit with a wave of 1970s nostalgia, and sits on the couch with them.
It's brilliant because it completely sidesteps the idea that animation is just a genre for children. They treated it as a medium with broad, multi-generational appeal.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, and they meticulously scheduled the programming blocks so that the massive back catalog rotated constantly. The reruns were basically a cash flow engine.
But behind the scenes, Turner's executives had to know that a network built entirely on nostalgia has a very clear expiration date.
Oh, they were deeply aware of that.
Because eventually, the parent gets up from the couch, the kid ages out of Yogi Bear, and suddenly you're just broadcasting museum pieces.
Exactly.
You need a reason for people to stay.
Which is exactly what triggered the mid-1990s pivot. They took the revenue from those old Hanna-Barbera reruns to fund an aggressive, totally unprecedented push into original programming.
The original explosion, and I mean the numbers from the mid-90s are just wild. By 1994, Cartoon Network hits 12.4 million viewers, and they become the 5th most popular cable channel in the country. They've completely proven the skeptics wrong on the 24-hour concept.
But instead of playing it safe, in 1995, they launch World Premiere Toons, which later becomes known as What a Cartoon.
Yeah.
This is arguably one of the most important incubators in modern animation history.
It really is.
Over a 3-year period, they funded and aired 48 original 7-minute animated shorts.
But the truly revolutionary part wasn't just airing them. Because looking at the press releases in our sources, they essentially turned the American viewing public into a massive live focus group.
Yes, they aired these experimental shorts and then hosted physical contests.
Like, viewers would literally call 1-800 numbers or mail-in votes for their favorites.
And just think about the risk mitigation there. In traditional television, you commit millions of dollars to a full 13-episode season based on a pilot that was, like, maybe tested in front of a dozen people in a conference room somewhere.
Right, and if it flops, you just eat the loss.
Exactly. Cartoon Network totally flipped the model, produce a cheap 7-minute short, broadcast it nationally, and look at the real-time Nielsen spikes. If the audience responds, you greenlight the series.
And the audience responded in a massive way. I mean, the top shorts chosen by the viewers became the classic cartoons.
Oh, yeah. Dexter's Laboratory in 1996.
Johnny Bravo.
Cow and Chicken.
Yeah.
And eventually the absolute cultural juggernaut, the Powerpuff Girls.
Let's dissect why a show like Dexter's Laboratory works so well. You have the creator, Genndy Tartakovsky, utilizing this very distinct retro-futuristic style.
Yes. Thick geometric outlines.
Yeah, it looks so sharply different from the kind of washed-out, fluid animation of the Hanna-Barbera reruns playing right before it.
It signaled a completely new era. It respected the intelligence of its audience, It had sharp comedic timing while maintaining a visually distinct aesthetic.
And we have to layer in a massive corporate shift that basically poured gasoline on this creative fire. In 1996, Turner Broadcasting merges with Time Warner.
Right, so Turner hands over the keys, and suddenly Cartoon Network gets access to the holy grail of animation.
The post-1948 Warner Bros. Library.
Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, the Looney Tunes.
Which is crazy because that was content that had previously been scattered across rival networks like Nickelodeon and ABC.
Exactly. The sheer volume of premium content they now controlled under one roof was just staggering. They could seamlessly program historic, high-value Looney Tunes right alongside their edgy, original cartoons.
The data on this synergy is mind-blowing. By the second quarter of 1999, Cartoon Network tied for the second highest-rated ad-supported basic cable network.
With a 1.1 total day household rating.
And my favorite data point from the sources, the June Bugs Marathon in 1999.
Oh, that was legendary.
They just ran 48 hours of Bugs Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
And it drew 21 million different viewers. That is Super Bowl-level reach for a basic cable marathon in the 90s.
They absolutely owned the critical 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. weekday slot, kids coming home from school.
Right.
But the corporate machinery that enabled this dominance was raising massive red flags in Washington.
Okay, here is where the story shifts from colorful cartoons to, like, a ruthless corporate thriller.
It really does.
We're looking at the 1996 Federal Trade Commission antitrust complaint. Time Warner is acquiring Turner in a massive $7.5 billion deal.
Right.
And the FTC looks at the paperwork and essentially slams on the brakes.
Because the FTC recognized that this wasn't just a media merger, it was a fundamental bottlenecking of the entire cable television industry.
Okay, unpack that.
To understand their panic, we really have to look at the HHI, the Herfindahl-Hirschman Index.
Okay, let's break down the math on this, because HHI sounds like incredibly dense economic jargon.
I know, but it's important. It's the standard metric the Department of Justice and the FTC use to measure market concentration.
How they calculate it?
You calculate it by squaring the market share of each firm competing in a market and then summing the resulting numbers.
Okay.
A market with an HHI below 1,500 is considered unconcentrated. Anything above 2,500 is highly concentrated.
And the FTC document warns that this specific merger would raise the market concentration by 663 points.
Bringing it to an HHI of 2212.
And a jump of 663 points is astronomical when you consider that regulators usually start sweating over a 100-point jump.
Exactly. Because post-merger, Time Warner would control over 40% of the entire cable programming market.
Wow.
HBO, CNN, TNT, TBS, and Cartoon Network, all under one corporate umbrella.
But the true danger wasn't just the sheer volume of programming, right?
Right.
The FTC was terrified of the distribution side.
Yes. Specifically, the involvement of a company called Telecommunications, Inc., or TCI.
TCI was the PLEP, like the actual cable operator running the physical wires to your house.
Precisely. Run by John Malone, who was this legendary and frankly ruthless cable executive.
Right.
TCI was the largest cable operator in the United States. They served 27% of all U.S. households.
But here's the major wrinkle. TCI already owned about 24% of Turner Broadcasting.
Yeah.
So in this merger, TCI is going to trade its Turner stock for a massive chunk of Time Warner stock.
Exactly. So the biggest creator of television channels is permanently getting into bed with the biggest distributor of television channels.
And the FTC found the smoking gun in the paperwork. Right before the merger was finalized, TCI signed programming service agreements, PSAs.
Right.
These were 20-year mandatory agreements guaranteeing that TCI would carry Turner networks like CNN and TNT on their cable systems.
And in exchange, TCI got an 85% industry average discount on the per-subscriber fees for those channels.
Wait, a 20-year lock? That is an absolute eternity in media.
It is.
Let me try to put this in perspective for you. It's like a massive national grocery chain TCI buying an ownership stake in the biggest network of farms, Time Warner.
I like that analogy.
And the grocery store signs a 20-year contract guaranteeing they will buy all their produce from those specific farms at an 85% discount.
Right.
And in return, they agree not to give any shelf space to rival farmers. So if you're a new farmer trying to sell carrots, you are locked out of 27% of the entire country's grocery stores right out of the gate.
It creates a completely impenetrable barrier to entry. The FTC argued that no new unaffiliated network could ever hope to launch or survive if they were automatically blocked from 27% of American homes.
But okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
This is all fascinating boardroom drama, but did this backroom monopoly stuff actually affect what a kid was watching on their TV on a Tuesday afternoon? Like, does the consumer actually suffer?
Oh, they absolutely do. Because if rival animation networks can't get distribution, competition dies.
Right.
And without competition, budgets shrink, innovation stagnates, and the consumer just gets endless, cheap reruns instead of new art.
That makes sense.
The FTC knew this, so to settle the complaint, TCI was ordered to cancel those 20-year agreements. They placed strict caps on TCI's ownership of Time Warner to ensure John Malone couldn't dictate Time Warner's programming decisions.
And they went after the bundling tactic too, right?
Yes, they did. Time Warner was legally barred from bundling HBO with Turner networks.
Because before the FTC stepped in, Time Warner could theoretically walk into, like, a small regional cable company and use leverage.
Exactly. They'd say, oh, you want to offer your subscribers the new season of The Sopranos on HBO? Well, you are contractually obligated to also pay us for Cartoon Network, CNN, and TNT.
Which is completely unfair to the small cable guy. So the FTC made that illegal to protect those smaller operators.
Right. But even with those FTC restrictions, Time Warner emerged as an absolute titan.
Oh, definitely.
And for Cartoon Network, being nestled inside that titan provided an incredible financial safety net. They had ironclad distribution on Time Warner's own vast cable systems, which gave them the freedom to experiment.
And that experimentation leads us directly to how they solved the biggest structural flaw of running a kids' network: the night shift.
The late-night advertising dilemma. This is where Cartoon Network transitions from a successful cable channel into an absolute cultural trailblazer.
So, set the scene for us.
Yeah.
It's the late 90s. Cartoon Network is completely dominating from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah.
But midnight rolls around, the kids go to sleep, and the network hits a brick wall. Advertisers absolutely refuse to buy late-night slots on a kids' network.
Because you can't sell Super Soakers to an empty living room at 1 a.m.
Right. It's essentially dead airtime.
Commercially, it was a total wasteland. But the network's programmers were looking at the Nielsen data and noticed this massive anomaly. Even though the programming was strictly for children, roughly 1/3 of the network's total audience consisted of childless adults.
Wow. So the nostalgic co-viewing strategy had actually worked too well. Adults were tuning in for old Bugs Bunny shorts or just sticking around because the new cartoons were genuinely funny.
Exactly. So the executives had an epiphany. Instead of desperately trying to sell kids' toys to sleeping children, why not pivot the programming entirely at night?
Sell adult products like fast food, video games, cars to the adults who are actually awake and watching.
And this realization births two of the most legendary programming blocks in television history, Toonami and Adult Swim.
So Toonami launches in 1997,
Yeah.
originally as an afternoon block, but it becomes a massive late-night staple.
Yeah, Toonami was essentially a cultural bridge. It successfully introduced Japanese anime to mainstream American audiences.
We're talking about Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, Gundam Wing.
Right. These were serialized, action-heavy stories with real stakes, which American animation rarely did at the time.
And the demographic shift is really clear in the data. By the first quarter of 2001, Toonami delivery grew by 58% among tweens 9 to 14.
They were capturing that critical demographic that was starting to age out of Dexter's lab, but wasn't quite ready for MTV.
And that tween success paved the way for the true late-night revolution: Adult Swim, which launched in September 2001.
Initially airing on Thursdays and Sundays from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m.
But to understand the true aesthetic of Adult Swim, you really have to look at its cornerstone: a show from 1994 called Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Oh man, Space Ghost.
I love the backstory on this show because it is the ultimate example of creative problem-solving through severe budget constraints.
Definitely.
They took an old, forgotten 1960s Hanna-Barbera superhero, Space Ghost, and turned him into a late-night talk show host, interviewing real, live-action celebrities on a monitor.
And the physical process of animating that show is just mind-boggling.
Tell me about it.
They literally had no budget. They couldn't afford to draw new animation, so the animators had to physically dig through the 1960s archives, find old animation cells of Space Ghost, and physically cut out the character's mouth with scissors.
Literally cutting the cells.
Yes. And then pasting it onto new backgrounds. It was a painstaking, cheap, and utterly surreal process.
And it created a completely absurd, jarring aesthetic. You have this stiff, poorly animated 1960s superhero awkwardly interviewing the Ramones or Jim Carrey.
It was amazing.
That mix of repurposed assets and surreal, deadpan comedy defined the entire early era of Adult Swim.
Oh, totally. Shows like C-Lab 2021 and Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, followed the exact same formula. Take an old property, remix the art, and add bizarre adult dialogue.
And then they paired those remix shows with bizarre original comedies like Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Right, and premium adult anime like Cowboy Bebop.
But the true genius of Adult Swim wasn't just creative. It was a structural hack of the television industry.
The Nielsen loophole.
Yes. This is my absolute favorite piece of corporate maneuvering in this entire story.
It's so smart.
In 2005, the strategy reaches its logical conclusion. Nielsen, the company that provides the ratings data that dictates all advertising rates, begins tracking Adult Swim as a completely separate network from Cartoon Network.
Even though they share the exact same physical channel space on your cable box.
Right. I want to make sure everyone grasps the brilliance of this. It's like a zoning law variance.
How do you mean?
Imagine you own a massive, successful children's playground. But at 10 p.m., the kids leave. Instead of closing the gates, you tell the city, actually, at 10 p.m., this exact plot of land is legally a nightclub.
That is a perfect way to put it, and the advertising mechanics behind this are fascinating.
How does that part work?
So ad buyers purchase commercial time based on CPM, or cost per mil, which is the cost to reach 1,000 viewers in a specific demographic.
Okay.
The CPM for kids aged 2 to 11 is relatively low, but the CPM for young adults aged 18 to 34 is incredibly high. By classifying Adult Swim as a separate network that only existed at night, the sales team didn't have to dilute their valuable adult demographics with the daytime kids' viewership.
That is brilliant. They could walk into an ad agency and say, we aren't a kids network that occasionally has adults watching. From 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., we are the #1 network on television for males 18 to 34. Pay us accordingly.
Exactly. They built a highly lucrative Trojan horse network inside their own dead airtime.
It was peak efficiency, hacking the broadcast day to maximize profitability across two entirely distinct audiences.
And Adult Swim defined young adult comedy for a decade, serving as the launchpad for massive hits like Robot Chicken, The Boondocks, and eventually Rick and Morty.
So the adults are locked in at night. But ironically, while Adult Swim is getting all the cultural buzz and the edgy magazine covers, the daytime programming is quietly building something much more lucrative.
Let's transition into peak dominance and the merchandising machine.
Yeah, because television ratings and ad revenue are only half the battle for a kids network.
Right. The real astronomical wealth, the billions, comes from consumer products. Licensing, toys, apparel, video games.
Our sources outline this staggering shift. The network wasn't just generating TV ratings anymore. It was moving physical products on a massive global scale.
Look at the Powerpuff Girls. In the year 2000 alone, that single intellectual property drove over $350 million in merchandise sales.
$350 million just on merchandise.
Yeah. And to manage this influx, they formed Cartoon Network Enterprises, or CNE. This was their dedicated in-house brand licensing and merchandising division.
And they got huge, didn't they?
Huge. By 2010, CNE ranked number 23 globally among all licensing agencies. They were generating $1.78 billion in worldwide retail sales.
We have to break down the economics of a massive hit to understand that $1.78 billion. Let's look at Ben 10.
Oh, Ben 10, the Golden Goose.
A show about a kid who finds an alien watch that lets him transform into 10 different monsters.
It is a concept precision engineered in a laboratory to sell plastic action figures.
Literally. And the licensing triangle for a show like Ben 10 is incredibly complex.
You have the network as the distributor and owner. You have a master toy licensee like Bandai manufacturing the physical toys. And you have the creative team, Man of Action, who developed the concept.
So when a Ben 10 toy sells at Walmart, the network takes a massive royalty percentage on the gross wholesale price from Bandai before the toy even hits the shelf.
Right. Ben 10 became a multi-billion-dollar franchise on its own. It practically funded an entire era of the network.
And that immense financial war chest from merchandising helped fund the network's next massive creative peak.
The animation renaissance of the early 2010s.
Yes. By 2012, Cartoon Network reached absolute record viewership numbers. This is the era of Adventure Time,
Regular show.
The Amazing World of Gumball, and shortly after, Steven Universe.
And these shows changed the dynamic entirely. They weren't just popular, they captured an older internet demographic.
It was the Tumblr era.
Exactly. The way audiences interacted with the network fundamentally changed. Fandoms were digitizing the viewing experience.
Audiences were creating fan art, analyzing every single frame for lore, and generating millions of organic impressions through GIFs and Reddit threads.
The network was basically firing on all cylinders. Critical acclaim, massive ratings, deep cultural penetration on the internet, and a multi-billion-dollar merchandising arm.
From the outside, the house looked utterly invincible. So, what happened? How did we get from breaking all-time records in 2012 to hashtag RIP Cartoon Network? Where did the foundational cracks start showing?
The cracks actually began forming much earlier than 2012. They were largely hidden behind those massive Ben 10 revenue numbers.
Really? That early?
Yeah. To trace the decline, we have to look closely at internal leadership changes and a fundamental misunderstanding of the network's core identity.
Okay, let's trace it back. The cracks in the foundation.
So the network's founding president was a visionary executive named Betty Cohen. She spearheaded the cartoons era and deeply understood that animation was an all-ages medium.
Right.
But she stepped down in 2001 and was replaced by Jim Samples.
What happens to the DNA of a company when that specific leadership changes?
The priorities quietly shift. Under Samples and later executives, we see the 2004 rebrand, known among fans as the CN City era.
Oh, I remember that.
The marketing subtly pivoted. Instead of positioning itself as an inclusive hub for all animation fans, the network started targeting a very specific young boys action demographic.
They were chasing the Ben 10 toy money.
Exactly, which from a corporate standpoint makes sense on a spreadsheet.
Sure.
But that chasing of trends led to what has to be one of the most baffling, destructive decisions in cable history. In 2009, they launched the CN Reel block.
This is a spectacular failure of brand identity. Cartoon Network, the network explicitly named after cartoons, decided to pivot into live-action television.
Yeah.
Why? Why abandon the one thing you were literally famous for?
Because they were looking at their rivals. Disney Channel was minting money with live-action sitcoms like Hannah Montana and High School Musical.
Right.
Nickelodeon had massive hits with iCarly. Furthermore, animation is expensive and slow. It takes 9 to 12 months to produce a single animated episode.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it took that long.
Yeah. But live-action reality television is incredibly cheap and fast to produce. So executives greenlit live-action reality and scripted shows like Out of Jimmy's Head, Destroy, Build, Destroy, and Tower Prep.
That is just wild. Imagine a legendary world-famous steakhouse suddenly changing its menu to sell cheap microwave burritos because a convenience store down the street is doing well.
Right.
You completely alienate the people who came for the steak. You don't tune into Cartoon Network to watch teenagers in a live-action high school.
And the core audience fiercely rejected it. The ratings for CN Reel cratered, and it severely damaged the brand's credibility.
I bet.
But an even more insidious problem was taking root. Let's call it the merchandise trap. Under executives like Stuart Snyder and later Christina Miller, the entire metric for judging a show's success fundamentally changed.
According to the memos and sources we have, a show was no longer judged by its Nielsen ratings, its critical acclaim, or its cultural footprint. It was judged almost entirely on toy sales.
This specific executive mindset led to heartbreaking cancellations for creators.
Let's talk about Symbionic Titan.
Yes. There was a brilliant, critically acclaimed, story-driven show called Symbionic Titan, created by Genndy Tartakovsky.
The Dexter's Lab guy.
Right. It was canceled after just one season. And the stated reason, it didn't secure a master toy licensee.
That's insane.
The toys weren't getting made, so the show was killed. The same fate met Young Justice. The network effectively became a distribution vehicle for toy commercials.
I have to express some genuine frustration here on behalf of the viewer. When you cancel brilliant shows because they don't sell enough plastic action figures, you bleed your visionary creators.
Oh, absolutely.
Craig McCracken, the genius behind the Powerpuff Girls, left for Disney. Genndy Tartakovsky left for Sony Animation. You are pushing away the very artists who built your empire because you are obsessed with a short-term retail spreadsheet.
And that obsession led to deep programming homogenization. To maximize the most profitable intellectual properties, the network's schedule became painfully repetitive.
The marathons.
Yes. By the mid-2010s, if you looked at a TV guide, the schedule was dominated by endless looping marathons of a single show, Teen Titans Go.
Which was like a hyperkinetic, loud, flash-animated comedy.
Exactly. If a new show didn't immediately match the frenetic comedic style of Teen Titans Go or immediately pop in toy sales, it was pushed to horrible Friday night time slots to die quietly, or it was outright canceled.
They alienated fans of variety, slower pacing, and serialized storytelling.
They did?
So you have internal mismanagement, the chasing of live-action trends, the alienating of foundational creators, and schedule fatigue. They weakened their own foundation.
Right.
But even with all of those missteps, they were still a highly profitable cable channel. So what was the catalyst that finally broke the dam?
Well, the internal mistakes made them vulnerable, but it was a massive external corporate merger that truly gutted the network's infrastructure. We are entering the 2020s, the era of the WBD merger and digital erasure.
The corporate musical chairs here is dizzying. AT&T had bought Time Warner, then spun it off, and it merged with Discovery in 2022 to form Warner Bros. Discovery.
Right.
And the man placed in charge of this massive new conglomerate is CEO David Zaslav.
And Zaslav entered the CEO role with a very clear, very ruthless mandate from Wall Street. Cut $3 billion in costs across the company to service their massive corporate debt.
And historically, in Hollywood, when executives need to cut costs, animation is always the first target on the chopping block.
Unfortunately, yes. The impact on the Warner Bros. Television group was brutal. Our sources show a 26% workforce reduction.
That's 82 direct layoffs and 43 unfilled positions, totaling 125 jobs eliminated in a single sweep.
And the cultural and symbolic blow came in mid-2023. Cartoon Network Studios, the dedicated state-of-the-art incubator in Burbank that had birthed everything from Dexter's lab to Steven Universe, was forced to vacate its historic building.
The building with the iconic character murals painted all over the stairwells. It was a legendary physical space for artists.
They merged operations with Warner Bros. Animation in what the studio chairman, Channing Dungey, termed a strategic realignment.
A strategic realignment.
Right. The separate development and production teams were combined into one.
But practically speaking, what does a strategic realignment actually mean for the art? Because Warner Bros. Animation is the legacy studio. They handle Batman, Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry.
Right.
Cartoon Network Studios was specifically built for new, weird ideas.
It meant a fundamental creative shift away from risk. The original talent incubators, the programs designed to find the next generation of creators, were largely canceled or severely curtailed.
That's depressing.
The corporate focus shifted heavily toward established IPs and reboots. From a purely financial risk assessment standpoint, it is much safer to greenlight another Powerpuff Girls reboot or a spin-off of Batman than to invest $10 million in a totally unknown, bizarre concept.
But the part of this era that I think truly sparked the #RIP Cartoon Network trend wasn't just the studio closing. It was the digital erasure. This is where the story gets dystopian.
It is deeply chilling for modern fans and creators alike. As part of Zaslav's aggressive cost-cutting measures, Warner Bros. Discovery began pulling massive amounts of legacy content from their own streaming platforms.
I need you to explain the mechanics of this, because to the average person, it makes no sense.
I know, it sounds crazy.
You own the streaming service, Max. You own the show. It costs pennies in server space to host a digital file. Why on earth would you permanently delete brilliant, acclaimed original shows like Infinity Train from the internet?
It basically comes down to tax write-downs and residual payouts. When a corporation merges, they can declare certain assets as impaired or underperforming.
Yep.
If they write down the value of a show like Infinity Train, they get a massive tax break. But legally, to claim that total loss, they can no longer monetize or exhibit the asset. They have to scrub it from their platform.
They literally make it cease to exist for a tax break.
Exactly. Furthermore, keeping a show on a streaming platform requires paying residuals to the actors, writers, and animators under union contracts like SAG-AFTRA or the Animation Guild.
Right.
If you completely remove the show, you stop paying those ongoing residual minimums.
Which is absolutely terrifying if you are an artist. You spend years pouring your soul into a show and it just vanishes. Your portfolio is legally wiped from existence because a spreadsheet algorithm determined it wasn't profitable enough this quarter.
And the erasure continued. In August 2024, they shut down CartoonNetwork.com entirely. Decades of games, clips, and history.
On.
The URL just redirects to the Max streaming homepage now, and the standalone Boomerang streaming app, killed and merged into Max.
The financial reality driving this panic is stark. If you look at the decade from 2014 to 2024, the combined ad revenue for Cartoon Network and Adult Swim plummeted by roughly 80%.
Adult Swim viewership dropped 84% over that same period. Cartoon Network's linear viewership dipped 26% in 2021 alone.
An 80% drop in revenue is apocalyptic. But why? Was the programming really that bad, or is this a structural collapse?
It's a structural collapse of the medium itself. We have to synthesize these internal failures with the massive external disruption of the broader media landscape.
By streaming.
The rise of streaming platforms like Netflix, Disney+, and the dominance of YouTube and TikTok completely shattered linear television habits for children.
Kids don't rush home at 4 p.m., sit on the carpet, and flip through channels anymore. They just open an app on an iPad and watch exactly what they want instantly.
Exactly. And Warner Bros., Discovery's own streaming app, Max, formerly HBO Max, failed to capture that young demographic.
Why do you think that is?
Well, the user interface and the brand identity of Max were geared towards adult prestige dramas. You know, Game of Thrones, Succession. It didn't feel like a kid's destination the way Disney Plus does.
I see.
So Cartoon Network's content was stranded, the linear TV model was dying, and they lacked a dedicated, easily accessible, culturally dominant digital home to transition into.
So when you look at the totality of this,
Yeah.
the Burbank studio shutting down, the websites being deleted, the massive layoffs, the 80% drop in revenue, the scrubbing of original art for tax write-downs, were the fans who tweeted hashtag RIP Cartoon Network actually right? Is the network dead?
Well, the network's PR team responded to the trending hashtag defensively, tweeting, "We're not dead, we're just turning 30.
Right.
And technically, from a legal and broadcast standpoint, they are correct. The channel still exists on your cable guide. They are still broadcasting. But the grim reality is that it is a hollowed-out shell of its former self. It survives mostly on the fumes of nostalgia, re-airing legacy content and endless IP reboots, rather than fostering the bold, creator-driven innovation that built the empire in the first place. The physical and cultural infrastructure that made it a titan has been systematically dismantled.
Okay, let's bring this epic journey all together. We started by looking at a brilliant, highly risky $320 million bet by Ted Turner on the analog tapes of the Hanna-Barbera library.
Right.
We watched it explode into an era of total cultural and financial dominance, pioneering live focus groups with cartoons, leveraging massive corporate mergers to lock down distribution, and literally hacking the television broadcast model with Adult Swim and the Nielsen loophole.
And then we watched it succumb to its own missteps.
Chasing toy sales over art, alienating its creators before finally being crushed by the reality of the streaming age, resulting in 80% revenue drops and the loss of its creative soul to tax write-downs and debt servicing.
It is a remarkable, sobering trajectory of modern media, and it leaves us with a critical, lingering question moving forward.
What's that?
As these centralized, linear animation networks fade away, and as content gets fractured and buried in infinite personalized streaming menus, how will the next generation of kids ever experience that shared, culture-defining moment of discovering their new favorite cartoon together?
That's a great point.
The collective water cooler moment for kids on the playground, where everyone watched the same premiere at 4 p.m. the day before, might be gone forever.
That is a fascinating and honestly quite heartbreaking thought to mull over. The entire landscape of shared pop culture is fracturing, and it's hard to see what replaces that communal experience. Thank you all for joining us on this massive deep dive into the rise and fall of Cartoon Network. Keep exploring, keep questioning the media you consume, and we'll catch you on the next one.